Elara Vance had always considered herself a woman of careful plans, meticulous lists, and perfectly executed contingencies. Her life in the city had been a testament to order. A demanding career as a graphic designer, a minimalist apartment, a calendar color-coded down to her morning yoga. Yet, here she was, standing on the cracked flagstones of a forgotten porch, facing a house that defied every principle of neatness she held dear. This was Sea Willow, her great-aunt Maeve's cottage, tucked away in the sleepy coastal town of Oakhaven. It smelled of salt and damp earth, of ancient wood and the wild, untamed roses that clawed at its walls. The paint on the clapboard was peeling like sunburnt skin, the windows were grimy with years of sea spray and neglect, and the garden was an impenetrable jungle of overgrown hydrangeas and brambles. It was, in a word, undone. Her own life felt a little undone these days too. A project that had consumed 2 years of her life had imploded spectacularly, taking with it a significant portion of her savings and her professional confidence. Then, a quiet, amicable but undeniably final breakup, with a man who was simply too neat, too predictable, had left her feeling. When the lawyer's letter arrived informing her of Maeve's passing and the unexpected inheritance of Sea Willow, Elara hadn't hesitated. Oakhaven was a name she barely remembered, a hazy memory from a single childhood summer, but it offered escape. A place to rebuild, to breathe, to figure out what came next, far from the critical hum of the city. She pushed open the creaking front door, sending a cloud of dust motes dancing in the slivers of sunlight that pierced the grimy panes. The air inside was cool and still, thick with the scent of old paper and dust. Maeve had been an artist, a free spirit who'd lived a life as vibrant and unruly as her garden. Elara remembered her great-aunt as a whirlwind of brightly colored scarves and laughter, a woman who saw beauty in imperfection. Now, surrounded by Maeve's eclectic treasures and forgotten projects, Elara felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name, a mix of sadness, awe, and an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Dust sheets draped over furniture formed ghostly figures, but even beneath them, the personality of the house shone through. A collection of sea glass sparkled on a mantelpiece. A half-finished canvas leaned against a wall, its vibrant colors still hinting at life. A grand, claw-footed bathtub stood proudly in the bathroom, promising long, hot soaks. But the charm was buried deep. There were leaks to contend with, a garden that needed an army to tame, and a general air of beautiful decay that would take monumental effort to restore. Elara ran a hand over a dusty wooden banister, the grain smooth beneath her fingers. She had no experience with home renovation, no handy skills to speak of, and a budget that was, frankly, tighter than a drum. Yet, a stubborn flicker of determination ignited within her. She hadn't come all this way to give up. This house was her fresh start, her blank canvas. She would unearth its beauty, piece by piece, and perhaps, in doing so, unearth a new version of herself. Her first day was a blur of unpacking essentials from her small car, sweeping away cobwebs with a broom she found leaning in a forgotten corner, and attempting to open a window that seemed to have been painted shut for decades. The salt air, crisp and invigorating, filled her lungs with every deep breath. The rhythmic crash of waves against the distant shore provided a soothing soundtrack to her solo endeavor. She found a small independent grocery store in the heart of Oakhaven, its bell jingling cheerfully as she entered. The owner, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, immediately recognized her as Maeve's niece. Small-town news traveled fast, Elara realized, feeling a blush creep up her neck. "Welcome to Oakhaven, dear," the woman, whose name tag read Agnes, said, her voice soft and welcoming. "Maeve used to tell me all about you, though you were just a little thing last time you were here. Said you had her spirit underneath all that city polish." Elara managed a weak smile. "I'm trying to find it again, I suppose." Agnes simply nodded, as if understanding unspoken volumes. "Well, Oakhaven has a way of helping folks do that. And Maeve's cottage, it's a special place. Needs a bit of love, but it's got good bones." "Good bones," Elara echoed later, sitting on the porch swing, miraculously intact despite its weather-beaten appearance, nursing a cup of tea. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and rose. The wild roses, despite their thorny embrace, released a surprisingly sweet perfume. She looked out at the riotous garden, then up at the sagging gutter, and a wave of exhaustion washed over her. She'd managed to clear a small patch of weeds, uncovering a moss-covered bird bath, but the sheer scale of the task felt insurmountable. This was harder than she'd imagined. Her careful plans had vanished the moment she'd stepped onto the property, replaced by a chaotic reality of rust, rot, and stubborn resistance. The independent, self-sufficient woman she prided herself on being felt utterly out of her depth. She let out a long, frustrated sigh, burying her face in her hands. Maybe she'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe she should just sell the place, cut her losses, and retreat back to the familiar, albeit sterile, comforts of city life. The thought was a cold comfort, however, because she knew there was nothing waiting for her there anymore. Just as the last vestiges of her resolve threatened to crumble, a sound broke the quiet evening. The low rumble of an engine, then the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Elara lifted her head, her heart giving a little flutter of unease. She hadn't expected anyone. A dark green pickup truck, well used but impeccably maintained, pulled to a stop. A man emerged from the driver's side, tall and lean, with broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his worn denim shirt. He had a kind face, framed by dark. He carried an aura of quiet competence, of someone comfortable in their own skin and with their hands. He walked towards the porch with an easy, unhurried gait, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "Evening," he said, his voice a warm, low rumble that seemed to fit the serene landscape perfectly. "You must be Elara Vance. Finn O'Connell. Agnes at the store mentioned you'd arrived. Figured you might need a hand getting settled." Elara stood, feeling a sudden rush of self-consciousness. Her hair was probably a mess, her face streaked with dirt, and she was wearing her oldest, most comfortable, and least fashionable, sweatpants. "Oh, hello, Finn. Yes, that's me. And Agnes talks a lot, doesn't she?" She tried for a light tone, but it came out a little breathless. Finn chuckled, a soft, genuine sound. "It's a small town. News travels, especially when Maeve's place gets a new owner. She was quite the character, your great-aunt." He gestured vaguely at the house. "Looks like you've got your work cut out for you." Elara bristled slightly, her independence flaring. "I'm sure I can handle it." His smile didn't waver. "I don't doubt your capability, Elara, but even the most capable hands can use an extra pair now and then. Maeve certainly wasn't afraid to ask for help when she needed it. She called me her fix-it Finn for years." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the porch, then settling on the window Elara had struggled with earlier. "That window, for instance, looks like it's been painted shut a good long while. A bit of heat, a good putty knife, and some elbow grease, and it'll be letting in that sea breeze in no time." He didn't make it sound like a criticism, just a simple observation, a gentle offer of expertise. Elara found herself disarmed by his unassuming confidence. She had been wrestling with that window for an hour, nearly breaking a nail and chipping a piece of the frame. I suppose I haven't quite mastered the art of unsticking windows yet," she admitted, a small, embarrassed laugh escaping her. "No shame in that," Finn said, taking a step closer. His eyes, she noticed, held a genuine warmth, an unhurried patience. "Every house has its quirks, and Maeve's had more than its fair share. I've known this place since I was a boy. My grandfather helped build some of these additions back in his day." He nodded towards a section of the porch roof. "Good solid work mostly. Just needs a little attention." Elara looked at him, then at the house. He saw it differently than she did. She saw a mountain of problems. He saw a history, a story, a project with good solid work at its core. "You're a handyman then?" "Carpenter by trade," he clarified. "Been in Oakhaven my whole life. My workshop's just down the road near the old lighthouse. I dabble in a bit of everything though, always enjoyed bringing old things back to life." He met her gaze, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to hum with something unspoken. "Looks like you're trying to do the same with this place." There was an understanding in his eyes that made Elara feel oddly seen. He wasn't just looking at the house. He was looking at her, at the weariness around her eyes, the determined set of her jaw. "I am," she confessed, her voice softer than she intended. "It's a lot, more than I anticipated." "Most worthwhile things are," Finn replied, his gaze drifting to the wild garden. "That rose bush, for instance, Looks like a lost cause, doesn't it? But Maeve always said it had the most stubborn roots and the most fragrant blooms once you gave it a proper chance to breathe. He turned back to her. Mind if I take a look at that window? It won't take a minute. Before she could form a polite refusal, he was already at the window, pulling a small, well-worn toolkit from a pouch on his belt. He worked with an economy of motion, his strong hand surprisingly gentle as he applied a little heat gun to the frame, then carefully, methodically, eased a thin blade into the seam. There was a faint crack, a sigh of wood, and with a soft push, the window slid open, letting in a gush of cool, salty air. Elara watched, mesmerized. It was such a small thing, but the ease with which he accomplished it, the sheer relief of having fresh air in the stuffy house, felt monumental. A tangible weight lifted from her shoulders. "Thank you," she said, genuinely grateful. "I was starting to think I'd have to break it." Finn smiled, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Sometimes you just need the right tool, and a little patience. This old house, it just needs a bit of coaxing. A lot of Maeve's things do, actually. She had a knack for finding beauty in the overlooked and giving things a second chance." He paused, his gaze lingering on her. "I think she'd be happy you're here, giving her home a second chance." The compliment, offered so casually, warmed her. It was a stark contrast to the demanding, results-driven world she'd left behind. "I hope so," she murmured. "It's certainly a change of pace." "Oakhaven has a way of slowing you down," Finn said, stepping back from the window. "Lets you see what's truly important. What's been unnoticed, perhaps." His eyes met hers again, and this time, Elara felt a peculiar shift, a spark of something new and unexpected. It wasn't just about the house, it was about her, and him, and the quiet understanding that seemed to bridge the gap between them. He didn't push for more work, didn't try to sell her a list of repairs. He simply offered his presence, his skill, and a comforting sense of solidarity. "Well," he said, turning back towards his truck, "I'll let you get back to it. Just wanted to introduce myself. If you find yourself in a bind or just want to know where the best fish and chips are, you know where to find me." He paused, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small, smooth piece of driftwood, polished by the sea. He handed it to her. "A little housewarming gift. Found it on the beach this morning. Always thought it looked like a tiny bird taking flight." Elara took the wood, her fingers brushing his for a fleeting moment. It was warm from his hand, smooth and surprisingly light. "Thank you," she whispered, genuinely touched by the simple, thoughtful gesture. "No problem, Elara Vance," Finn said, giving her another one of his easy smiles. "Welcome home." He got back into his truck, started the engine, and with a final wave, drove off down the gravel path, leaving Elara standing on her porch, holding a piece of driftwood and breathing in the fresh, sea-scented air. The sun had finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep purples and blues. The house, though still daunting, felt a little less overwhelming. The open window, the fresh air, the small, smooth piece of wood in her hand, they were tangible signs of hope. Finn had arrived like an answer to an unspoken prayer, a kindness she hadn't known she needed. He had seen the undone and offered a way to begin again, not with judgment, but with quiet reassurance. Elara walked back into the living room, the driftwood clutched in her hand. She placed it on the dusty mantelpiece, next to Maeve's sea glass. It looked perfectly at home there. She looked around, and for the first time, she didn't just see the work that lay ahead, the repairs, the cleaning, the restoration. She saw the potential for warmth, for beauty, for a life that was perhaps a little less planned, a little more spontaneous, a little more unburdened. The quiet hum she'd felt earlier, the one that lingered after Finn had left, wasn't just the sound of the ocean. It was the sound of something awakening, something she hadn't even realized had been asleep. It was the beginning of her own unearthing. Eleanor stood in the silent living room, the late afternoon sun painting stripes across the dusty floorboards. The hum she'd felt earlier wasn't just the ocean. It was a resonance within her own chest, a faint vibration that promised possibility. Finn's presence, brief as it was, had scraped away a layer of her usual composure, revealing something tender and curious beneath. She traced the outline of a faded rose on the wallpaper with her fingertip, a small involuntary smile playing on her lips. For the first time in years, the future felt less like a meticulously drafted blueprint and more like an exciting, unread novel. She spent the rest of the evening in a daze of quiet contemplation. Instead of immediately making lists, as her usual routine would demand, she simply existed in the house. She walked through each room again, not with a critical eye for flaws, but with an open heart, trying to hear the whispers of its past. The kitchen, with its chipped porcelain sink and ancient stove, suddenly seemed less daunting and more. The bedrooms upstairs, each with a unique view of either the tangled garden or the endless sea, invited dreams. She found a window seat overlooking the ocean, cushioned with decades of dust, and sat there as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender. The vastness of the sea mirrored the new, expansive feeling in her soul. Dinner was a simple affair, a sandwich made with supplies she'd brought from the city, eaten on a crate in the living room. But it tasted different, seasoned with the salt air and the quiet thrill of solitude. There was no internet yet, no television, no distractions. Just the rhythmic crash of waves, the distant cry of a seagull, and the incessant murmur of her own awakening thought. She fell asleep that night on an air mattress in what would eventually be the master bedroom, the windows open to the cool sea breeze, feeling more at peace than she had in a long, long time. The next morning, Eleanor woke with a surprising lightness. The burden of expectation, both her own and others, felt momentarily lifted. Her first task, she decided, wouldn't be demolition or planning, but exploration. She wanted to truly meet the house. She pulled on comfortable clothes, faded jeans and a soft cotton shirt, and began her archaeological dig, starting with the dusty attic. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten lives. Old trunks filled with yellowed lace, moth-eaten shawls, and sepia-toned photographs of stern-faced ancestors. Books with crumbling spines, their pages smelling of vanilla and dust. A child's rocking horse, missing an eye, sat patiently in a corner. As she carefully sifted through the items, a story began to emerge. A family, generations rooted in this very spot, their joys and sorrows echoing in the quiet air. She found an old wooden box, intricately carved, hidden beneath a pile of quilts. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a silver locket, tarnished with age. She opened it, revealing two faded miniature portraits, a young woman with kind eyes and a man with a gentle smile. Eleanor felt a kinship with them, a sense of belonging she hadn't anticipated. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was a vessel of memories, waiting to be cherished once more. Hours later, covered in dust but feeling invigorated, she descended from the attic. The house no longer felt like a project, it felt like a silent companion. She knew she needed supplies, and food, and a way to connect with the outside world. But for now, the sheer joy of discovery was enough. She ventured out in the late afternoon, walking down the winding dirt path towards the village. Port Blossom was even more charming in the daylight. Lobster boats bobbed gently in the harbor, their traps stacked high on the docks. Weather-beaten shacks housed small businesses, a bait shop, a general store, a quaint cafe with mismatched chairs outside. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of salt and pine. As she approached the general store, a familiar truck, a sturdy, slightly dented pickup, was parked outside. Her heart gave a little skip. I am Ty. She told herself it was purely coincidental, that Port Blossom was a small town, but a warmth spread through her chest nonetheless. He was inside, leaning against the counter, chatting with an elderly woman whose silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun. His laugh, a low, easy rumble, reached her ears before she even saw him clearly. When he turned, his eyes, the color of the sea on a stormy day, met hers, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. Eleanor, he greeted, pushing himself off the counter. I figured you'd be making your way down here eventually. Welcome to the heart of Port Blossom. Finn, she replied, feeling a blush creep up her neck. It's lovely, and quite a trove I've discovered. She gestured vaguely back towards her house. The old lighthouse keeper's cottage, eh? Full of stories, I'd imagine. He nodded knowingly. You find any ghosts yet? His eyes twinkled with playful mischief. Eleanor chuckled, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in ages. Only friendly ones, I think. A whole family of them. She paused, feeling unexpectedly comfortable sharing this. I found an old locket in the attic with portraits inside. It felt personal. Finn's smile softened. That's the magic of these old places. They cling to the lives lived within them. Good for you for feeling it. He didn't mock her sentimentality but embraced it, which was a refreshing change from the pragmatic world she usually inhabited. What brings you to the general store? Supplies, I assume. Yes, and a phone signal, hopefully, she admitted, holding up her dead phone. I forgot to charge it before I left, and I haven't found an outlet that works yet. Ah, the joys of old wiring, he sympathized. There's a charging station right here behind the counter if you like, and Martha here runs the best little general store this side of the bay. He gestured to the elderly woman, who smiled warmly at Eleanor. Martha Peterson, dear, the woman said, extending a wrinkled hand. Heard you bought the old lighthouse keeper's place. My grandmother used to tell stories about the O'Malleys who lived there. Good people. Eleanor Vance, she replied, shaking Martha's hand. It's lovely to meet you. And the house it's wonderful. While her phone charged, Eleanor browsed the shelves, picking up essentials. Coffee, bread, fresh produce, and a few local delicacies Martha recommended, homemade preserves and a flaky apple pie. Finn, meanwhile, was discussing lobster traps with Martha, his voice a comforting murmur in the background. She found herself stealing glances at him, noticing the way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the strong line of his jaw, the ease with which he interacted with everyone. He was so utterly off this place, so rooted, and it was deeply appealing. Need a hand with those? Finn offered as she approached the counter, her arms laden with groceries. Oh, I'm fine, thank you, she began, but he was already taking the heavy bag of apples from her. Nonsense. It's the least I can do. Besides, I'm heading in your direction, just picking up a few things for my dad. He picked up a small bag of feed. My place isn't far from yours, just a bit further down the coast. I own the fishing charter business, Port Blossom Charters, down by the docks. Eleanor felt a flutter. So, he wasn't just a friendly local, he was a neighbor and a businessman. This could make things interesting. Oh, that's very kind of you, Finn. Thank you. They walked out into the fading light, the cool evening air a welcome embrace. Finn's truck was old, but meticulously kept, its interior smelling faintly of sea salt and pine. He loaded her groceries into the back. No, I'll put them in the passenger seat, she insisted, not wanting to impose. Don't be silly, he said with a grin. Hop in, I'm driving you home. Eleanor hesitated for only a second, then found herself climbing into the passenger seat. The worn fabric felt surprisingly comfortable, and the view from the slightly elevated seat was new. As they drove, the conversation flowed easily. She found herself telling him about her attic discoveries, about the sense of history she felt in the house, about her plans for the restoration. He listened intently, interjecting with local anecdotes or practical advice about old houses. You'll want to get that wiring checked out sooner rather than later, he advised gently. Old houses can be tricky. I know a good electrician, if you need a recommendation. A local guy, been in Port Blossom his whole life. That would be wonderful, thank you, she said, genuinely grateful. It's all a bit overwhelming, to be honest. I'm used to, blueprints, not dust and surprises. Surprises are the best part, aren't they? He countered, glancing at her, his eyes warm. They keep life interesting. And dust? That's just history waiting to be swept away. His perspective was so different from hers, yet so refreshing. She found herself smiling, truly smiling, without effort. When they pulled up to her cottage, the house looked different in the twilight, a silhouette against the purpling sky, no longer lonely, but waiting. Finn helped her carry the bags inside, placing them carefully on her makeshift table. Well, looks like you're set for the night, he said, turning to leave. Thank you, Finn, truly, Eleanor said, a genuine warmth in her voice. For the lift, for the advice, for... He paused at the doorway, turning to face her. The faint light from the window illuminated his features, softening them. Anytime, Eleanor. That's what neighbors are for in Port Blossom. If you need anything at all, just holler. Or, He paused, a playful glint in his eye. If you just fancy a cup of coffee tomorrow morning, my place isn't far. Or I could bring some over. I make a pretty decent brew. Her heart skipped again. A casual offer, yet it felt significant. I'd like that, she admitted, a little breathlessly. Maybe around 9? I'll have the dust cleared from at least one corner by then. He laughed, a rich, warm sound that filled the old house. Don't worry about the dust, Eleanor. Just worry about enjoying the sunrise. See you then. And with a final lingering look, he was gone, leaving her standing in the quiet house, a fresh batch of groceries on the table, and a new, exhilarating anticipation bubbling within her. She unpacked slowly, each item a reminder of the easy connection she'd just made. The apple pie, Martha's recommendation, seemed to hum with the warmth of port blossom. The next morning, Eleanor was up with the sun, a rare feat for her. Instead of immediately tackling a renovation task, she found herself making a genuine effort to make the house feel welcoming, not just for herself but for her anticipated guests. She opened all the windows, letting the fresh sea air blow through, chasing away the mustiness. She swept a small area in the living room, revealing a patch of gleaming hardwood. She even managed to get one of the ancient outlets working, plugging in a small lamp she'd brought, casting a soft glow. She brewed a pot of the coffee she'd bought, the rich aroma filling the air. At precisely 9 o'clock, she heard the crunch of tires on the gravel path. Finn. She felt a nervous flutter, a delightful, unfamiliar sensation. She smoothed her hair, checked her reflection in a dusty mirror, and then, taking a deep breath, opened the door. He stood there, a thermos in one hand, a small paper bag in the other, a wide smile on his face. He was wearing a faded blue t-shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders and worn jeans, looking effortlessly charming. Good morning, Eleanor. I brought reinforcements, Martha's legendary blueberry muffins. Finn, good morning, she replied, stepping aside to let him in. And reinforcements are always welcome. Come in. I've got coffee on. He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping around the living room. Wow, he said, genuinely impressed. You've already made quite a difference. It feels lighter. Just a bit of sweeping and fresh air, she demurred, but his compliment warmed her. And a working outlet, which felt like a major victory. They settled in the cleared corner of the living room, on 2 old crates she'd found in the shed, covered with a clean drop cloth. The coffee was hot and strong, and the blueberry muffins were indeed legendary. The conversation picked up seamlessly from the day before, flowing from the practicalities of house renovation to the history of Port Blossom to their own lives. Eleanor found herself talking about her work as an architect, the precision and planning she usually thrived on, and the unexpected joy of letting go of that control here. She spoke about the demanding clients, the tight deadlines, the constant pressure to create perfection. She realized as she spoke how much of her identity was tied to her work, and how little room that left for anything else. Finn listened, his eyes thoughtful. It sounds like you're very good at what you do, Eleanor, but also a bit trapped by it. She met his gaze, a surprising honesty in her own. Sometimes, yes, I built a very structured life for myself. It felt safe, predictable. And now? He prompted gently. She looked around the dusty, imperfect room, then out the window at the sparkling ocean. Now it feels like I'm learning to breathe again. Like I'm rediscovering parts of myself I didn't even know were missing. She felt a blush creeping up again, embarrassed by her sudden candor, yet unable to stop. It's strange. This house, this town, it's all so different from anything I've known. Finn smiled, a comforting, understanding smile. That's a good strange, I think. We get stuck in our ways, don't we? Think we know what we want, what makes us happy. Sometimes it takes a whole new landscape to show us what we really need. He took a sip of his coffee. For me, it's always been the ocean. My family's been fishing these waters for generations. I tried to leave once after college, went to the city for a few years, but it never felt right. The concrete canyons, the endless rush. I missed the salt on my skin, the sound of the gulls, the quiet rhythm of the tides. Came back, bought my own boat, started the charter business. Never looked back. Eleanor listened, fascinated. His story was the inverse of hers, yet the core sentiment was the same, a search for belonging, for a life that felt authentic. So you found your way back to your roots. And then some, he confirmed. There's a deep satisfaction in it, helping people connect with the sea, sharing this place I love. It's not about big city lights or fancy promotions. It's about genuine experiences, about finding peace. He met her gaze again, and this time, the unspoken understanding between them was palpable. Maybe you're finding your roots here too, Eleanor, or planting new ones. Their conversation stretched for hours, covering everything from sustainable fishing practices to Eleanor's favorite architectural styles. From Finn's childhood mischief in Port Blossom to Eleanor's quiet upbringing in a book-filled home. She found herself laughing easily, sharing stories she hadn't thought about in years, feeling a lightness she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Finn had a way of drawing her out, of making her feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to shed the carefully constructed facade she usually presented to the world. As the morning wore on, Finn offered to help her with some of the immediate practicalities. "I'm heading down to the docks to check on the boats. If you want, I could swing by the hardware store on my way back and pick up some basic tools for you, or some cleaning supplies, save you a trip." "That would be incredibly helpful, Finn," she said, truly touched by his generosity. "I really appreciate it. I'm a bit out of my depth with anything beyond a tape measure and a laptop." "No problem at all," he said, standing up. "Just make a list. Or, better yet, I can swing by after the docks, and we can go over what you need. 2 heads are better than 1, especially when tackling a project like this." He smiled, a hint of his earlier playful mischief in his eyes. "And I might even know a thing or two about patching up old houses." Eleanor felt a thrill go through her. The idea of tackling the house with him, even just for a shopping trip, was surprisingly appealing. "That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Finn." After he left, the house felt a little emptier, but also filled with the lingering warmth of his presence. Eleanor immediately started a list, not just of practical items, but of questions she wanted to ask him, ideas she wanted to bounce off him. The house, which had felt like a solitary challenge, now felt like a shared adventure. True to his word, Finn returned later that afternoon. This time, he didn't just stand at the door, he came in, his easy presence filling the space. Together they walked through the house, Eleanor pointing out leaky faucets, wobbly floorboards, and the general need for a serious deep clean. Finn listened intently, offering practical solutions and suggestions, his knowledge of old houses clearly extensive. He pointed out the sturdy bones beneath the decay, the quality of the original craftsmanship. "This place has good integrity, Eleanor," he said, tapping a solid oak beam in the living room. "It's got character. It just needs a little love and attention, and someone who sees its potential." He looked at her then, his gaze warm and direct. "Someone like you." Her cheeks flushed at his compliment, but she met his eyes, a spark of shared understanding passing between them. "I'm starting to see it too," she confessed. "More and more each day." They made a comprehensive list, and Finn offered to drive her to the larger hardware store in the next town over, where they'd have a wider selection. "It'll be quicker with 2 of us, and I know the back roads," he explained. The drive was an unexpected joy. Finn had a knack for storytelling, sharing tales of Port Blossom's eccentric characters and its rich maritime history. He pointed out landmarks, hidden coves, and the best spots for watching the sunset. Eleanor found herself completely absorbed, listening to his deep voice, feeling the gentle rhythm of the truck on the winding coastal roads. She felt herself relaxing, truly letting go of the city dweller's tension that had become almost a part of her. At the hardware store, Finn was a revelation. He knew exactly what obscure plumbing parts they needed, which type of wood filler was best for old floors, and even haggled good-naturedly with the store owner, a gruff but friendly man named Gus, who clearly knew and respected Finn. Eleanor, usually so confident in her professional decisions, found herself happily deferring to his expertise, enjoying the novelty of being guided rather than being the guide. They returned to Port Blossom as dusk began to fall, the back of Finn's truck filled with bags of tools, cleaning supplies, and a new sense of camaraderie between them. As they unloaded everything at her cottage, the air grew cooler, and the first stars began to prickle in the darkening sky. "Thank you, Finn," Eleanor said, looking at the piles of new equipment. "I would have been completely lost without you. This is more than I could ask for." He leaned against the doorframe, his hands tucked into his pockets, a comfortable ease about him. "My pleasure, Eleanor. Seriously, it's good to see this old place getting some love, and it's good to have a new face in town." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "Tell you what, tomorrow, I'm taking my boat out for a little run, checking on some traps. If you're not afraid of a little sea spray, you could join me. Get a different perspective on Port Blossom. See your house from the water." Eleanor's heart leaped. A boat trip. with Finn. It was exactly the kind of spontaneous, unburdened experience she was secretly craving. "I'd love that, Finn. What time?" "Be down at the docks around 7? We catch the tide." He grinned, a flash of white in the dim light. "Bring a warm jacket. It gets chilly out there." 7 it is, she confirmed, a genuine excitement bubbling up inside her. After Finn left, Eleanor didn't just unpack the tools. She felt a profound shift within herself. The house no longer felt like a monument to a past she didn't know, but a canvas for a future she was eager to paint. And Finn, with his easy charm and grounded wisdom, was quickly becoming an indispensable part of that vision. She spent the evening organizing her new supplies, but her mind kept drifting to the morning. The ocean. The boat. Finn, toi. She felt a lightness, a sense of anticipation that had been absent from her life for years. This wasn't just about restoring a house, it was about restoring herself. And in the quiet hum of the sea, she knew, deep down, that she was finally on the right path. She was ready for the unearthing, not just of the cottage's hidden beauty, but of her own. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was ready for something else too, something she hadn't dared to name, but that felt warm and promising, like the first rays of dawn over the Port Blossom harbor. Clara took a deep, fortifying breath, the salty air filling her lungs with a clean, invigorating crispness. She pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned in protest, and stepped inside. The air was cool and still, thick with the scent of damp earth, salt, and something else. Something ancient and slightly sweet, like dried lavender or old paper. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight slicing through grimy windows, illuminating a scene of quiet neglect. The cottage was larger than it appeared from the outside, a rambling affair with low ceilings and unexpected nooks. The main living area had a grand, if currently soot-stained stone fireplace that dominated one wall, its mantelpiece heavy with the ghosts of forgotten ornaments. Yellowed floral wallpaper peeled in places, revealing glimpses of an older, plainer cream beneath. The floorboards, dark with age, groaned companionably under her sensible boot. She wandered from room to room, her heart a quiet drumbeat of anticipation. A small kitchen, surprisingly bright, with a window overlooking the garden and the sea beyond, promised future mornings filled with the aroma of coffee and toast. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms, sparsely furnished with antique iron beds and worn chests of drawers, offered views of either the wild, overgrown garden or the endless expanse of the ocean. In one of the bedrooms, a tiny, almost hidden door led to a small attic space, filled with forgotten treasures, a dusty sewing machine, a stack of brittle old books, a wooden rocking horse with one missing eye. She touched everything gently, a sense of reverence settling over her. This wasn't just a project. It was an archaeological dig of someone's life, and in turn, a journey into her own. The first few days were a blur of unpacking essentials, scrubbing away layers of grime, and making lists that grew longer with each discovery. She found a leaky faucet, a drafty window, and a section of floorboard that dipped ominously. But with each challenge, there was a thrill of possibility. She cleaned the kitchen thoroughly, finding a small working stove and a surprisingly sturdy, if chipped, Belfast sink. The simple act of boiling water for tea felt like a small victory. She ate simple meals, mostly sandwiches and fruit, perched on an overturned bucket, watching the light change over the sea. One afternoon, needing a break from scrubbing mildew, she decided to venture into Port Blossom proper. The village, nestled around its picturesque harbor, was a charming collection of weather-beaten cottages, brightly painted storefronts, and fishing boats bobbing gently in the water. The scent of salt and fresh-baked bread mingled in the air. She found a small grocery store, the salty pantry, its bell jingling cheerfully as she entered. Inside, shelves were stacked high with local produce, homemade jams, and everyday necessities. "Well, hello there, dear," a warm voice greeted her. A woman with a cheerful, round face, spectacles perched on her nose, emerged from behind a counter piled high with fresh pastries. "Haven't seen you around before. You must be the new owner of the old lighthouse keeper's cottage, aren't you?" Clara smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes. "That's me, Clara Thorne, and yes, it's quite a project." "Oh, it certainly is," the woman chuckled. But a beautiful one too. I'm Maggie. My family's owned this shop for 3 generations. Welcome to Port Blossom, Clara. Anything you need, just ask. Maggie was a fount of local information, pointing Clara towards the hardware store. Ask for old Mr. Henderson, he knows everything. The best place for fresh fish, and even suggesting a local carpenter who was a wizard with old wood. Clara left the pantry with a bag full of provisions, a warm feeling in her chest, and a renewed sense of belonging. Port Blossom was welcoming her, one friendly smile at a time. Back at the cottage, armed with a new broom and cleaning supplies, Clara tackled the living room. As she swept away decades of dust from the hearth, her hand brushed against something loose behind the mantelpiece. Curiosity piqued. She investigated, her fingers tracing the edge of a small, cleverly concealed wooden panel. With a gentle tug, it opened, revealing a shallow recess. Inside, nestled amongst cobwebs, was a small, leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age, and a tarnished silver locket. Her breath caught. This was more than just a house. It was a repository of stories. She carefully extracted the journal and locket, her heart thrumming. The journal was dated from the late 1800s, written in elegant, looping script. She resisted the urge to read it immediately, placing the treasures reverently on a clean, sun-drenched windowsill. She would save them for a quiet evening, a reward for her labor. The next morning, determined to tackle the leaky faucet in the kitchen, Clara found herself utterly stumped. She'd watched enough DIY shows, but the intricate tangle of pipes beneath the sink was far more intimidating in reality. Frowning, she tried tightening a wrench on a fitting, only to hear a sickening drip, drip, drip intensify. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she muttered, exasperated. Just then, a light tap sounded at the front door. Clara wiped her hands on her jeans, wondering who it could be. She hadn't told anyone she was here, besides Maggie. Standing on her doorstep was a man, tall and lean, with a friendly smile that crinkled the corners of his hazel eyes. He had a mop of sandy brown hair that looked perpetually wind-tousled and was dressed in practical work trousers and a sturdy plaid shirt. He carried a toolbox that looked like it had seen years of honest labor. "Morning," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble, like the distant sound of waves. "You must be Clara. Maggie sent me, said you might be in need of a hand with the cottage. Elias Thorne, at your service." He extended a calloused hand. Clara felt a blush creep up her neck. "Oh, Elias. Yes, Clara Thorne. It's lovely to meet you, and Maggie is a lifesaver. I was just battling the kitchen sink, and I think I might have made it worse." Elias chuckled. A genuine, easy sound. "Happens to the best of us. Mind if I take a look?" He followed her into the kitchen, his gaze sweeping over the room with a practiced eye. He knelt effortlessly under the sink, his broad shoulders filling the small space. Clara watched, fascinated, as his hands, strong and capable, moved with a quiet efficiency, assessing the problem. He asked a few questions, his eyes meeting hers briefly, a spark of shared understanding passing between them. "Looks like a worn washer and a slightly corroded pipe," he announced after a few minutes, emerging from under the sink. "Nothing a few spare parts and some elbow grease can't fix. I've got the tools in my truck, and I can pop down to Henderson's for the parts. Be back in an hour or so, if that works for you." "That would be wonderful, Elias. Thank you so much." She felt a wave of relief wash over her. Not only was the sink problem going to be solved, but there was something incredibly reassuring about his calm competence. He nodded, that easy smile returning. "No problem at all. Maggie said you'd be tackling the whole place. It's a grand old cottage, lots of character." His eyes twinkled. "And probably lots of surprises." "Oh, you have no idea," Clara laughed, gesturing vaguely towards the mantelpiece where the journal and locket lay. "I found these yesterday." Elias glanced at the items, his smile softening. "Ah, a little piece of Port Blossom history. The old lighthouse keeper's family lived here for generations. They say the house holds many stories." His gaze lingered on her for a moment, a thoughtful expression on his face, before he excused himself to get the parts. Clara spent the hour he was gone in a flurry of activity, tidying the kitchen, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in a long time. When Elias returned, he worked diligently, explaining each step as he went, making the process of fixing a leaky faucet sound almost poetic. Within an hour, the drip was gone, replaced by the steady hum of a properly functioning tap. "There you go," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Good as new, or at least, good as old." "Elias, I can't thank you enough. How much do I owe you?" He waved a dismissive hand. "First one's on the house, consider it a Port Blossom welcome. Besides, Maggie promised me a slice of her famous apple pie for my troubles. Just point me in the direction of the next project when you're ready." Clara felt a warmth spread through her. "Well, if you're offering, I have a list," she admitted, a shy smile playing on her lips. "A very long list." "Good," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "I like a challenge, and this old place deserves to be brought back to life." He paused, then added, "Just like some people do." The implication hung in the air, gentle and unspoken, but Clara felt its weight. He saw more than just a house. He saw her. Over the next few weeks, Elias became a regular welcome presence at the cottage. He was a man of quiet expertise, his hands skilled with wood and stone, his mind sharp and observant. He fixed the drafty window, reinforced the sagging floorboard, and even helped Clara clear some of the dense, overgrown brambles from the garden, revealing a hidden stone path leading down towards the cliff edge. Their conversations started practical, centered around joists and paint samples, but gradually deepened. He told her about growing up in Port Blossom, about his family's long history in boat building and carpentry, about the challenges and joys of living in a small, close-knit community. Clara, in turn, found herself opening up, cautiously at first, then with increasing ease. She spoke of her work in graphic design, her love for old architecture, and the sense of being adrift that had led her to seek refuge in this seaside haven. She didn't delve into the specifics of why she felt adrift, not yet. But Elias listened with an empathy that made her feel understood without needing to explain. One particularly blustery afternoon, they were working on sanding down an old, intricately carved wooden doorframe, revealing the rich dark grain beneath layers of paint. The rhythmic scrape of sandpaper against wood filled the air, punctuated by the mournful cries of gulls. "This is beautiful," Clara murmured, tracing a finger over a newly exposed knot in the wood. "It's like finding a hidden treasure." Elias paused, leaning back on his heels. "That's what I love about old houses, Clara. They have layers, each one tells a story, you just have to be patient enough to peel them back." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "It's a lot like people, I suppose." Clara met his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. "Yes," she said softly. "It is." She thought of the journal and locket she still hadn't opened, saving them for a moment when she felt truly ready. Perhaps that moment was approaching. Later that evening, the rain drumming against the windows, Clara finally retrieved the journal and locket. She lit a single candle, its flame dancing, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The air was cool, but a comforting warmth settled over her as she opened the brittle pages of the journal. The first entry was dated October 1888. The handwriting was indeed elegant, belonging to a woman named Elara, the lighthouse keeper's wife. Elara wrote of her daily life, the rhythm of the sea, the challenges of raising children in a remote cottage, and her deep love for her husband, Thomas. Clara read of storms and calm seas, of small joys and quiet heartbreaks. Elara's words painted a vivid picture of a life lived with resilience and a deep connection to the wild beauty of Port Blossom. The locket, when she finally managed to pry it open, contained two tiny, faded photographs, a stern but kind-looking man with a neatly trimmed beard, and a young woman, strikingly beautiful, with eyes that seemed to sparkle, even in the aged silver. Elara and Thomas. Clara felt a profound connection to this woman from the past, a shared sense of place, of quiet endurance, of hope. Reading Elara's words, Clara realized that her own journey, while different, echoed some of the same themes. The desire for a safe harbor, the longing for connection, the courage to face the unknown. Elara's stories, full of quiet strength, began to subtly mend something within Clara, like a balm applied to an old wound. She felt less alone, more grounded, as if the very walls of the cottage were whispering encouragement. The cottage began to transform, slowly but surely. Elias helped her choose period-appropriate fixtures, explaining the nuances of materials and craftsmanship. He taught her how to mix mortar for repointing a section of the stone exterior, his hands guiding hers, their fingers brushing occasionally, sending a jolt of warmth through Clara. She found herself looking forward to his arrival each morning, to their shared work, and to the easy companionship that had blossomed between them. One crisp autumn morning, Elias arrived with a surprise. "Thought we might need a break from dust and paint," he said, holding up 2 steaming cups of coffee and a bag of warm, flaky croissants from Maggie's shop. "And I know a spot with the best view in Port Blossom." He led her through the winding, overgrown path in her garden, which he had helped clear, down towards the cliff edge. There, perched on a sturdy, weathered bench overlooking the expansive sweep of the ocean, they sat in comfortable silence, sipping coffee, the sun warm on their faces. Below them, waves crashed against the rocks, a rhythmic symphony. "This is incredible, Elias," Clara breathed, feeling a profound sense of peace. "Thank you." "My pleasure," he replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Sometimes you need to step back and appreciate the canvas before you can keep painting." He turned to her, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "How are you doing, Clara? Really doing?" The question, so simple and direct, caught her off guard. She hesitated, then found herself speaking words she hadn't consciously formulated until that moment. I'm finding myself again, and I think. This cottage, this place, it's helping me put the pieces back together. I felt so lost before, after everything fell apart." She still didn't elaborate on the everything, but the raw honesty in her voice was enough. Elias listened, his eyes warm and understanding. He didn't press, didn't offer platitudes. He simply sat there, a comforting, steady presence. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the most beautiful things are built from the pieces that fell apart. You just need the right tools and a little patience." He reached out, his calloused thumb gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The simple touch sent a shiver through her, a ripple of something new and exquisite. Clara looked into his eyes, seeing not just kindness, but a deep well of empathy and strength. She realized then that the something else she had sensed on her arrival was not just the cottage, but the possibility of connection, of shared journey, of a love that felt as natural and grounding as the sea itself. The thought, warm and fragile, settled in her heart. A few days later, a small challenge arose. Clara was trying to remove an old stubborn window frame in the master bedroom, which overlooked the sea. It was stuck fast, warped by decades of sea air and neglect. She tugged and pried, her frustration mounting. Elias arrived, as he often did, with his toolbox and a cheerful greeting. He watched her for a moment, then took the pry bar from her hand. "Here, let me show you a trick." He positioned himself, assessing the frame, then, with a series of precise, controlled movements, applied pressure in just the right spots. With a final protesting groan, the frame loosened and came free. Clara clapped her hands, genuinely impressed. "Elias, you're a magician. I was about to give up and call it a permanent feature." He grinned, his eyes sparkling. "Just experience, and knowing when to use finesse over brute force." He leaned against the newly opened window, gazing out at the churning gray sea. "This view's going to be magnificent once you get that new sash in." "It really is," she agreed, standing beside him, the fresh sea breeze whipping through the room. "Sometimes I just want to sit here and watch the waves for hours." "You should," he said softly, turning to face her. "Don't forget to live in the beauty you're creating, Clara, not just build it." Their eyes met, and for a long moment, the sounds of the sea, the wind, and the world outside faded away. There was an unspoken connection, a silent current flowing between them that was growing stronger with each passing day. Clara felt her heart expand, a sense of belonging settling deep within her. It wasn't just the cottage that was being restored, it was her spirit, blossoming under the gentle care and quiet strength of Elias. She knew with a certainty that hummed through her veins that this was just the beginning. The cottage was finding its soul again, and so was she, with Elias, a steadfast presence by her side. The days melted into weeks, each one painting a new layer onto the cottage's ancient beams and Clara's healing heart. The kitchen, once a forgotten shell, became a symphony of warm wood and gleaming copper, a testament to their combined effort. Elias, with his steady hands and quiet competence, built custom shelves and repaired warped floorboards, while Clara, with her artist's eye, chose the perfect shade of cream for the cabinets and unearthed vintage tiles from a local antique shop that sang with character. Their mornings began with the scent of coffee brewing and the gentle hum of Elias's tools, their evenings with shared meals cooked in their newly restored kitchen, bathed in the golden glow of a single hanging lantern. They talked about everything and nothing. The history of the cottage, the quirks of the nearby town, Clara's dreams of painting again, Elias's quiet passion for woodworking. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, the quiet current between them deepening, strengthening. Clara found herself anticipating Elias's arrival each morning, a warmth spreading through her chest at the sight of his truck rumbling up the lane. He would bring her a fresh croissant from the bakery, or a wildflower he'd found on his walk. Small gestures that spoke volumes. She, in turn, would leave him a fresh glass of lemonade on his workbench, or sketch him unawares as he worked, capturing the focused intensity in his eyes, the subtle strength of his profile. These sketches, tucked away in her journal, were her silent confessions. One blustery afternoon, as they were painting the last coat of sage green on the living room walls, a sudden gust of wind rattled an old, loose window pane. Elias instinctively reached out, his hand covering Clara's as she steadied herself. His touch, warm and firm, sent a jolt through her, echoing the silent current that had become so familiar. He didn't pull away immediately, his gaze meeting hers, a silent question passing between them, a shared acknowledgement of the unspoken. Later that week, as they began to furnish the bedrooms, a flicker of Clara's old anxieties surfaced. She was choosing fabrics for the guest room, imagining a future that felt too settled, too happy. A shadow from her past, a fleeting memory of transience and uncertainty, brushed against her peace. Elias, sensitive to her sudden quietness, paused from assembling a bed frame. "Everything all right, Clara?" he asked, his voice soft, perceptive. She hesitated, then sighed, gesturing around the half-finished room. It's so beautiful, so permanent. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm capable of holding on to something this good." Elias walked over to her, his movements deliberate. He didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he simply reached for her hand, tracing the lines on her palm with his thumb. "Building something beautiful takes effort," he said, his voice a low rumble. "And courage. You have both, Clara. Look around. You've built so much of this, not just with your hands but with your heart. Permanence isn't about resisting change, it's about choosing what to hold on to and nurturing it." He squeezed her hand gently. "You're not alone in this, you know." His words, simple and true, were like a balm. They didn't erase her past anxieties, but they anchored her firmly in the present, with him. She looked at him, at the steady kindness in his eyes, and a profound sense of trust settled over her. As autumn deepened, painting the surrounding woods in fiery hues, the cottage neared completion. The last of the dust was swept away, the final piece of furniture placed. The cottage, once a forgotten shell, now hummed with life, a vibrant, welcoming home. One evening, after a celebratory dinner of roasted chicken and fresh garden vegetables, they sat on the newly installed porch swing, watching the stars begin to prickle the inky sky. A cool breeze rustled through the oak leaves, a gentle symphony. "It's incredible, Elias," Clara murmured, leaning back against the swing's sturdy frame. "It's more beautiful than I ever imagined." "It has your spirit in it, Clara," Elias replied, his voice soft. "Every brushstroke, every careful choice. It feels like home." He paused, then turned his head, his gaze finding hers in the dim light. And not just the cottage. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew what he meant. She felt it too. This profound sense of belonging that extended beyond the walls of the cottage directly to him. "Elias," she began, her voice a little shaky, He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing over her skin. The gesture was tender, hesitant, yet resolute. "Clara," he whispered, his eyes searching hers. "I've never met anyone like you. You came here, saw possibility where others saw ruin, and you brought life back to this place. And to me." His voice, usually so steady, held a tremor of vulnerability that touched her deeply. I want to be a part of that life. A part of your life, always. Tears welled in Clara's eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming joy and relief. The silent current that had flowed between them for weeks now surged, a powerful, undeniable wave. Elias, she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. I want that too. More than anything. She leaned into his touch, her hand finding his, intertwining their fingers. In the quiet symphony of the evening, under the watchful gaze of the rising moon, he leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was as gentle and profound as the love that had bloomed between them. It was a kiss of promise, of belonging, of two souls finding their true home in each other. The cottage, fully restored and radiating warmth, stood as a testament to their journey, but it was just the beginning. In the weeks and months that followed, Clara and Elias filled its rooms with laughter, shared dreams, and the quiet comfort of a love that was both deep and effortless. Clara's art studio, once a forgotten attic space, became a vibrant hub of creativity, her canvases now bursting with color, inspired by the light and the man who had shown her how to truly see it. Elias continued to craft beautiful things, his hands now working with a renewed purpose, building not just furniture, but a future. They woke each morning to the soft light filtering through the restored windows, the smell of coffee, and the comforting presence of each other. The cottage had found its soul, and Clara had found hers, inextricably linked with Elias, her steadfast love, her gentle strength, her forever home. And as the stars twinkled outside their window each night, they knew, with a certainty that hummed through every fiber of their being, that this was just the beginning of their beautiful, enduring story.